you up to a full desk now.
I'm honored. That's what I'm looking for.
Don't be.
Okay, would you would please join me in pledging allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get to the activities of the night, I just need to say that there is a star in the council tonight.
I think I've seen it.
You know, TV, you know, what, Academy Award, no, not Academy Award, no,
You
something.
have to talk to my manager for details.
Okay, that's- Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Does everybody know everybody? Everybody knows Stan?
Yep.
Well, Stan, I know your cousin pretty well, John.
Oh, yeah. Okay. First item on the agenda tonight is the election of planning board officers. And I will take a motion for a chair.
Nominate Dan Watson.
Here.
I'll second.
Do any other nominations? Why don't we do this together? Is there, take nominations
If
for?
there's only one, just.
Yeah, okay.
You don't even need it.
I want to make it official so that, you know, people at home can see that. All those in favor of Dan Hawks as chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. We need a nomination for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Royce Posada.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any other names? No? Okay, all those in favor of Royce, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
The motion was made by,
Oh,
Simone.
and Tom seconded.
correct.
We have a full house tonight, so the associate members will not be voting tonight. Just, you know, sorry about that.
I can get a desk.
One step is all set. But you got a new sign too, see it's white.
I know, I'm moving up.
Someday you want to aspire to it, never mind. There will be a couple of changes to the agenda tonight. We're supposed to have somebody speaking here, but he's not here, so we'll move right along. First item is the adoption of the minutes of December the 9th. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any corrections, changes, anything you want to add to it? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the approval of the minutes of the meeting of December the 9th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Good. Public hearings, there are none. In your packet, the next item on the new business, we thought it might be an interesting idea to, this is probably for my benefit more than anything else, to go over the list of planning board rules and procedures. So in your packet, I guess the last item. Packet. We want to make sure that we kind of follow. These are the procedures and questions. Those people that were on the subcommittee that did this, didn't realize that that was all the way back into the bicentennial when Pittsfield was founded, especially with Fred Raines. Any questions on any of these?
Well, I'll go with I was always under the impression that it takes 4 members to pass or deny a motion, regardless of how many members are present. Is that what it's saying, or does it? The quorum is 5 members, does it mean we have to have a majority of 5 members when we vote? Or is it always 4 members?
That's a good question, because that has also been discussed
That was always my impression.
at the council meetings too, right?
It just came up again.
It just came up again in terms of, it has to be 4.
I think so.
I thought regardless, the quorum is 5.
Right.
That's all. A majority of 7 members is needed to pass a motion for denial.
No, I think the,
Isn't that what it says?
Well, that's what it
It's kind of vague,
says.
actually.
The
Four
board
equals 5
members,
members.
board majority,
the board majority of 7 members would be, so but if only 5 people show up,
Yeah, but that's not what it's saying. So I would like to have that clear on that. Does it take a majority of people that are here voting, or does 4 members?
Ron,
I would read this as a vote of 4 members is needed regardless of how many members are in attendance. We cannot call the meeting to order unless we have 5 members present. That's how I would read this.
that's the way I interpret it also.
So if we only have 4, we need 4 members to pass or reject them.
Right.
Yeah.
But we have to have 5 members that are for.
I don't
That-
see it that
I
way.
mean,
Pardon?
I don't see it that way.
No, I think that's,
I mean, 3 over 2 is a majority of 3. So
right, but that's not what this is saying.
Yeah,
It says a vote of 4 members.
yeah. And it
I
says,
mean, you have 5 people here, 4 voting.
I think.
read it, a vote of 4 members, and in parentheses it says a board majority. By a board majority means majority of people sitting on the entire board.
Right.
Not of those present.
Not of those present.
That was
I-
very
I-
muddy.
I believe this is in the town charter also. So whether it's this committee or the council or a couple of others, they need to have
Yeah, it needs to be,
4 people to vote.
from what I've seen in the town ordinances and charter, there's no place where it states that a simple majority or a majority present. Everywhere it references the full number being a majority. So it's always 4 or 7 or, however many are on the board.
Yeah. Okay. The second page here is the board procedures for applications, review, and site plans.
Should be in your packet. This one.
you were sticking with the second page.
Yeah.
So how about attendance required, remind everybody of, they should be calling you if they're open.
Okay.
This,
Steve, do you want people to call?
yeah.
Okay.
That's required.
Okay, if you are gonna miss a meeting, if you would get word to Nicole in the office.
That would be, that would qualify as excusing you if you didn't make, but the next one says, any member that misses 3 consecutive meetings or 4 unexcused, no, I didn't read that, I didn't read it, but anyway, that one is one that we probably never enforce, but if you're not gonna be here, you're supposed to call, otherwise it's an unexcused absence.
Will email work?
Yeah?
Yeah,
And to Nicole.
yes.
Yeah?
Or your cell phone?
My-
Done that once or twice.
Or I guess actually you could call me if you wanted.
I think one time it was basically after hours, something happened, I just couldn't get away,
What are you, a farmer or something?
I'm hoping or something.
Unfortunately.
I'm trying not to be farmer.
And I think we want the ribbon back then. I think that the idea of the voting procedure, the idea to say yay or nay is so that the recording system will pick it up. Okay, any other questions on that page? If we take a look at the board procedures for applicants. I guess my question, Steve, to you is, so if somebody wants to fill out an application, do they get a copy of this when they come into the office?
Nope. I'm not saying they couldn't, but we don't.
Any thoughts, ideas?
I think it would be a good idea when someone, if they're interested in the board, the planning board, for them to know what to expect. Would there be any opposition to giving them a copy of the rules?
You're talking about somebody
In the planning, coming onto the planning board.
coming onto the planning board. No, I think
Yes.
that's an orientation package.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's probably a decent idea. Yeah.
See, they all get a code book. I don't think we've got.
Right,
You
right.
get yours yet, Stan?
No.
We're still tracking down
It's also part of our physical fitness program.
If you can lift it.
But this is talking about for review and site visits, it's supposedly pertain to or it does pertain to the site approval process.
Any other concerns, issues? So let me go back and ask my question again, Steve. So somebody wants to fill out an application. Do they get some kind of a checklist of, this is what I need to do for the?
Yeah, they get that, the review that we all go through.
Yeah.
They
get a copy of that.
They get a copy of that a week before the meeting, like the planning board does.
Okay.
If they see some of my suggestions, I might suggest that they do this or do that. It gives them a week to prepare that information for you people.
Okay.
What it is I ask them the audience and tell them that under each question, type in bold, italic print, the answer to that question. That way they don't have to type the whole thing over again.
Okay. All set. The next item on the list was Priscilla, and they will not be here tonight under old business. Brent, you have some comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, I spoke with my brother briefly, and I'm still not 100% clear on what drives these traffic studies or plans being done. What I do think I understand is it's like a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if it's a mom and pop store compared to like a Home Depot, I mean, there's discretion there. And I think we as a planning board have to pursue that or look at it that way. They can provide one, if the site plan provides one, a traffic design or traffic plan, and we don't think it's adequate, we potentially get a third party, someone to review it. Instead of doing a full-blown traffic plan, they could look at that when that was done and see if it's adequate, and maybe sign off on it that way. But as far as what drives that, I think it's up to the engineer of record, design engineer, to determine if that, the traffic control plan is needed.
I think one of the concerns when this was brought up a while ago was that it would be possible that a client would have to pay for two.
Right.
One with their engineer and then one the town would say would have to do it.
And we could come to that, I suppose, if we don't like what we're hearing, or don't agree with it, then we could potentially ask for a third-party review of that, which might be another professional engineer looking at that, not necessarily, like I said, doing the whole traffic design again, but just reviewing it, saying, no, it's okay, and go that way.
And are you saying that the client would pay for that? Yeah.
Well, that's up to, I guess that's up to us. If it's additional, then do we pay for it, or does the client pay? That's what we have to decide, I would think.
What Vaughn's thought was that we should hire the person to do the traffic study, and the applicant should reimburse us for that money. I don't think he intended to have two.
Duplication.
He just had the one, but he wanted the town to have the control over who we hire, and to make sure that the person is representing the town, not so much the applicant. I think he thought he'd get a fairer.
But is that contrary to what's done everywhere else? I mean,
Well,
I don't know how it's done, other places. I would think, the developer would hire their engineer, and then that engineer would decide, because they're the ones that are responsible for it. They have to professionally stamp it and say it's okay.
I just thought
I don't know.
Vaughn thought ought to happen.
If it's a big enough project,
Right.
the company is gonna have different departments that do different things, so it's all in, one price, and, you go up standalone,
Yeah. I mean, if it's 10 vehicles a day, probably not an issue, but if it's 1,000 a day, then obviously there's an issue, and I think as a planning board, we should know, or should have some idea. If one wasn't done, then perhaps we need one done, and then make them do it if it wasn't done.
Well, I think in that particular case, also the responsibility to make sure that happens rests with this group.
Right.
So when we're going through the application.
And if it's in the DOT right away, then I'm sure the DOT's gonna have some say in that as well, right?
Yeah.
I just got a question on, so if we structure it in such a way that we choose the entity doing the traffic study, who among us is actually gonna choose that? Where's that decision gonna be made? I mean, I don't have anything
Well,
qualified.
I don't know exactly what you mean.
But so if the town's gonna choose the traffic study, who among us can choose a traffic study? I wouldn't know where to go. Who's actually gonna choose that?
It's like if you were building a house, you hired an engineer to tell you how to build it.
Okay, so that's what happens. This company that's applying for the building permit has already chosen their engineer. So do we have to hire another engineer?
Yeah, there's a conflict of interest. I've run into that. Yeah. And yeah, you can solicit 3 bids, I suppose, or something like that, if it comes down to that. But
These are just questions I don't have an answer for, so.
Ron?
I was gonna say that it would go out to bid. I would think if we had to hire somebody, it would have to go out to bid. Right, because we would have to seek 3 bids for the process.
Yes, I know.
What would that do to the project? Would it delay it by?
Yeah, it probably would
Probably
delay
would,
it.
sure.
Or if somebody were faced with that option, would they just throw up their hands and walk away?
Exactly, because a lot of times these projects they're planned ahead to start at a certain time and to complete so that business can proceed by a certain date. And if we throw a wrench into it, that's going to delay the process for the client.
yeah, you're right, because the time that site plan review comes in, that traffic study should be done, so we know.
Right.
Or if it hasn't been done, then we'll know.
Yeah,
And if then we tag on that, it could be 6 months, a year down the road for that stuff.
if we choose another traffic study because we don't like the one they came up with.
Right.
and we got the same answers they did. Where does that leave us?
Or if it's delayed, they could say, well, I'm sorry, I'm going somewhere else.
But that would be, if you do, what you're talking about is what we were saying earlier, that would be a duplicate study.
If our traffic study said the same thing their traffic study said,
What if we prove it?
but we wanted to have a traffic study because we didn't like what their traffic study said.
Right, that's right.
I would lean to having them provide it, and then if we don't want to have a third party review that, say that was done. And that is quicker, I would think that way.
Mo?
I know when I put in my sugar shack up there, I wanted another driveway. 'Cause I didn't want the people coming into the shack to use my driveway. I had the state come out. And that's who did my traffic study, and Steve, I think you're the one that told me, well, you talked to the state, and the state came out, and they had a little guy that had a card, he had a little radar thing or something on there, and they could look down the road to see the line of sight and how far the line of sight was and so forth and so on. And initially they said, no, you are not going to put a driveway in at that sugar shack. You're going to have to come and build a road from your house to your sugar shack. And then what I ended up telling them was, well, I appealed it to the state, the office up in Bangor, supervisor comes down, and he's looking at the driveway from my house and says, how the hell did you ever get a permit to put a driveway here? Okay? And I'm like, well, I don't know, somebody gave him a permit, I don't know who it was, but he goes, well, you're not supposed to have a driveway here, you shouldn't have a driveway up there, so you're gonna have to build this road. So I said, well, why don't we do a study now that you're here, and see where is the better line of sight, from on top of the hill or my driveway, because if I'm gonna have customers coming in, right, they can see better from the top of the hill than from my driveway. So I said, so if you're gonna tell me they have to come here, I said, geez, if somebody pulls out of my driveway, related to business and they get hit, I said, I'm gonna have to come after you guys, because you wouldn't let me put in a driveway up there where it was the better line of sight. So that was what the whole thing happened, but it was, my point in it is that the state is the one, the DOT, that did my thing out there. So why would the state not be involved here?
They will, but they'll review what the engineer of record submits to them for the developer. They're gonna review what they did, and if they don't like it, they'll add or delete from it. But something like your entrance to your house, yeah, that's the state's review, and they can do that, but major development, they'll review what the engineer did.
May I add something here? What you apply for with the state is a driveway entrance permit. Anytime a person builds a new driveway on a state road, they have to have this permit.
Right.
If they were building an industrial park here, that is a state road, they wouldn't have to have it.
Oh, because that was, okay, because that was on a state road. That's
Yeah,
why
but basically, the only purpose of doing it is safety and ditching, so that somebody doesn't, the town looks at it, so to make sure that when they build a driveway, they put the right side culvert in.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were across the street on,
If I was on a pool road, I wouldn't have to
Right.
go through it.
the state wouldn't have been involved at all.
Yeah, okay.
So can I,
What about our public works? Can't we, I mean, we get good guys here, we're talking about lengthening the process for somebody to be able to start building. And what about our own folks that work in Pittsfield? Can they not be trained to go out and do this traffic study?
That's a serious liability, well, designing something like that, an intersection or entrance,
Yeah.
you gotta have a professional stamp.
Okay.
That's what I would guess, I think.
so the suggestion is that we don't require a traffic study, that we review what the engineer on record has said, and then if we think that it's appropriate, we say go ahead, and if we don't, then we order a traffic study.
Right, if there's any question that we have, then we could probably ask for another review of it by an independent.
Yeah.
Now, it seems to me, don't we talk to the engineer, don't they come down and present the project to
Sometimes, yeah.
us? So would we have the opportunity then to ask questions about the traffic study.
Well, the other thing is, when these people come before the town to start the whole process, you have a pretty good idea at that point what type of project they're gonna be doing. So we'd have a little bit of a heads up, or you could give us a little bit of a heads up on the magnitude of the project if we think there's gonna be, a big traffic impact. So at that point, we could say that, that looks like it's gonna need that traffic survey, a few months before we get to the point where they're trying to come before us with all the numbers. Because, if they know at the beginning, I think it'd go better for everybody
Because
involved.
isn't there a pre-site review?
Or you
Before
can
they come in?
application meeting with the planning board if they desire.
Yeah, then before it goes to a full-blown.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've had a few of them that
Yeah.
have come in just to kind of get how you guys feel about it. It's defined in the ordinance. So it almost sounds like what you guys are saying, is if you don't need to change that site plan review, you're happy the way it is.
Maybe we just need to be attuned to what the project is, where it is, when we meet with their engineer, if we have questions, maybe we can get the answers right there. And that saves everyone money, time, and aggravation.
Well, I would ask also, so I don't think I'm qualified to make an engineering decision on whether something needs a site or a traffic study or not.
No, we
I can
would
make a
talk to
guess.
their engineer.
We talk to
Yeah.
their engineer, right? So here's a speculative situation. Let's say we talk to their engineer and their engineer says, oh yeah, everything's good, everything looks fine and we're all on board, and we say, yeah, sure, okay. And then 2 years down the road, we have a situation like we have in front of Duncan now, where it's clearly at least slightly problematic, right? Like, we all kind of acknowledge that ideally there would be a traffic light there or some sort of impediment to everybody just kind of blowing through there. What power do we have to backtrack on that and say, now the situation has changed, now our assessment's changed, we should probably do a traffic study? Do we have any authority to do that at all?
But there was a traffic study done, right, by the state?
Yes, there was.
Right,
And,
but
and Steve, am I right to say that if we didn't like that study and we wanted to proceed and put a street light there, we couldn't do that and just make the street light go if the state doesn't think it's necessary?
That's true, the state would have to be the one to decide on the streetlight situation.
How
So
many
that
times
wouldn't-
have we had
we
an issue?
wouldn't get anything out of that.
right.
It would have just delayed it and honestly, from my own experience, I'm up there quite often in and out of that, the credit union and the shop. I can't see a problem. I mean, there's a long wait sometimes, but it happens. It's nothing like living in Portland, I can tell you
But if
that.
people would drive the speed limit through there, it would help too. I mean, that's 30 miles an hour through there.
Yeah.
When we work out there, people going 50 through there.
Yeah, well,
That's
that's
a
another
big part of
matter,
it.
yeah.
That's,
The biggest problem I have is trying to get out of the industrial park.
It is, it is hard. I've been there.
The left turn out of the industrial
Depending on
park
which way you're going, yeah.
is,
Yes.
I mean, coming out of Elm Street, sometimes you have to wait several minutes. So, I mean, I think we have these occasional issues, but I don't know if it's worth all
for a
this.
personal vehicle, it can be, a little bit of weight. If you're in a commercial truck,
yeah.
it's a whole different
That's a
thing.
different story.
You
yeah.
just go.
I always give them the right way.
And I think this is what maybe brought up some of the discussion about this, was because of what happens if, I mean, technically, there still is a piece of property down there that could be developed, correct? On the other side of Walgreens or whatever it is nowadays. So, I mean, something goes in there, which, I don't know whether that would happen or not, but if something went in there, that would really, I think, that would complicate.
That might change the whole
issue
picture,
significantly.
right?
But I think, the point being that right now, the hardest thing is to come out of the industrial park. And the other piece is, and Steve and I were gonna go down and start to move bricks this morning. we were talking about, I mean, that thing with the sign in it,
I know.
because there's a couple businesses in there who, what's the trucking company that's down at the end?
Land Air.
Land Air. Their drivers are told to come down through the center of town and go into Land Air the back way, because a couple of those trucks can't make that turn.
Yeah.
No, it's the couple of the drivers can't.
I just say the driver.
Okay.
But they have to hire who they can get.
Well,
But a lot, so that does create some, some issues downtown, too. But, I think the idea was that if something else happens to go in down there, it could get to be a little scary, so we just,
Then we'd have another study done and there'd be a whole new set of circumstances.
yeah, and maybe there might be a traffic light then.
Right.
Who knows?
personally, I think that island with the sign on it, on some aspects, I think creates a safer environment right there.
Separation.
The separation
Yeah.
is.
But it needs flowers or something.
I don't care about that. It's.
Okay, so as it stands right now, we're kind of comfortable with where we are. And if, we're doing our job reviewing applications, we ask questions about traffic study, and it might warrant or necessitate, an additional,
But those questions were asked,
yes.
and that were asked and we were told, right?
But the only problem I have at that intersection isn't because people are coming in and out of either side, it's because of the traffic that builds up on Somerset Avenue after a while. That kind of just
The Somerset
stops.
Avenue traffic seems to get through. It's everyone else waiting for
Yeah.
the Somerset Avenue traffic.
Yeah.
Well, from 3:15 on for about the next 45 minutes, that
Yes.
traffic heading down Somerset toward the interstate is pretty heavy. And you can
I have the
meet,
same problem getting out my driveway.
Yeah, I do too.
so. Okay,
Do you think that you would vote not to make any changes?
I think that was my next step, is that we vote to, no changes at this point. Is there a motion for that, to that effect?
I'd like to make a motion that we make no changes at this point.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any additional discussion?
Second was low?
Yes.
Ms. Mull. Okay, all those, everybody understand what the motion is? No changes at this point. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. The issue stands as it is. The next item on the agenda talks about the comprehensive plan. And I think what Steve did was at least refresh my memory. So we've actually had some discussions about that over the past year.
We've actually made changes.
Huh?
We've made changes in the
And
ordinance.
we've made changes in a lot of the ordinances, so we've done some things that maybe we were accused of not doing. And so I think at this point in time, we've had a chance to look that over.
It's not to say that we shouldn't consider the comprehensive plan and see where else changes are needed.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass something out. It's not necessarily related to this. And then I want to make a comment or two. And Steve's starting to get worried now. I think this was done by Catherine this year, or someone.
I'm gonna pass out some cookies or something.
No, that was the last day.
Oh, you
No,
missed
that's a long time ago.
You missed that.
set the standard.
Thank you. I'll pass these down. Thank you.
I guess personally, I've always viewed the comprehensive plan, in addition to guidelines and rules and regulations and things that you have to follow, also a picture of the type of town that you would like to have. And I think that, Pete, did you see this? Do you want one? Sure. And I think it goes back a little bit to the discussion that we had about the planning board and applications for building and all of those kinds of things. Because we want to be welcoming to people. We want them to come to town, whether they want to build a house or build a new Home Depot. That we want to make it so that it fits into what we want to have here in town. And so, I mean, we can have all kinds of rules and regulations and everything like that. And Peter, I'm glad you're kind of here because, and I'm going to say something that some people aren't going to like, but I think the planning board has as much of a role, maybe even more of a role in determining economic growth in this area as maybe the council does. Because we determine what kind of comes to town and what doesn't come to town. And I just think that we need to be kind of sensitive to those kinds of issues, you know. And I think one of the things that didn't happen that I feel badly about, and I'll take some responsibility for that, and that has to do with the Bicentennial Committee. Because I think one of the things that I would have liked to have seen out of that, okay, so we look back 200 years ago, you know, and Moses Martin is bringing his wagon up through the woods. But I think it's more important now that we talk about the next, not 200 years, but the next 20 years. And, you know, people are complaining, taxes are going up and all of those kinds of issues. And I know that there's a perception out there that the only way you can get your taxes down is to bring businesses into town. And I'm not sure about that. I think you can have housing come to town and people are paying property tax. That helps too. So I think right now, for the next 4, 5, 6 years, it's a critical time in terms of how do we want to market the community. And I think as a group and as individuals on this committee, we can play a major role in that. And you know, Brent, I'm going to pick on you for a second because you're a contractor and you get to meet a lot of people. And by spreading the word, you know, maybe we can get some different things to come into town, because I still think there's time for improvement. Not everybody is going to want to live in Waterville after they get all that downtown construction done. You know, they may look for a place that's 15 or 20 minutes away so that they can move around a little bit. But what I would like to see happen is maybe a couple of times a year, the planning board, in conjunction with the council, and I wish there were some other council members here tonight, but maybe the planning board, in conjunction with the council, have some community dialogues. And just bring people in, put the newspaper, you know, those big sheets of newspaper up on the wall.
Cookies.
and cookies. Put the newspaper on the wall. People just go in and they write stuff down in terms of what they would like to see, and then you begin to prioritize some of those things. Is that good? Yeah, that could be costly in the beginning, but I think we need to find a way to bring more people into town. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a big business town. Now, the other thing that I asked, he really is going to throw a chair at me. I asked Steve that maybe if, about a couple of months ago before the weather got bad, Steve and I took a ride around town and looked at some things. And if you haven't done that, I'd like, hop in Steve's truck. He's got a new truck. Wait until the weather gets a little bit nicer and you can sit in the back and just kind of go through and look at some of the places that are in town. Now, when Simone came in tonight, what did Simone talk about? She talked about the house that's across the street from her. Go down to the transfer station on Peltoma. First block, the house in the corner. Those kinds of things really don't present a very nice image. And I think we need to do a little cleanup as well. And Steve has tried. He really has tried. But I think we still have to keep moving along and try to do some things. There are a couple, and I don't think it would work. I shouldn't say that. There are a couple of communities, not in Maine, but not too far away from here, where they go in and they take some of the property that's acquired from taxes. The town takes that over. There's a group in town that kind of gets the houses, the facilities, the buildings back up to a certain standard. And then they sell them. First home something, I think is maybe what it's called, for younger couples who can't afford to buy, expensive types of homes. But it brings somebody into town, they like it here, they stay, and they, when the next big,
tax revenue.
and that's tax revenue. And that's the kind of revenue I think we really need to give serious consideration to. But in talking again, if you ride through town, I think the reason that might be a useful activity is there's some empty properties in town, lots, but they're kind of weird because they look like this. And we've talked about small houses or whatever you want to call them. What do we want to do with those pieces of property that are right in town also? But there is property in town where people could come in and maybe with support of something, I'm not sure what, but I think that would be an interesting project to take a look at in terms of taking some of the properties that are still salvageable and doing something to kind of promote some additional growth.
Now, what about some of those properties that really aren't salvageable? There's a lot there, and I know the town lots aren't huge, most of them, but could those lots be opened up for a tiny house or for?
I think that's our choice. That's our decision. That's I guess what I'm saying is maybe we need to talk
Or the
about
footprint or something.
Yeah. I mean, the piece of property that's across the street from MCI, is that going to sell? And if it sells, what's it going to be? Is it going to be another park? Not that I'm against parks, but what's going to go in there? So I think
Would you want a tiny home?
Well, I don't know, but see, that's the kind of decision that you need. Those are the kinds of decisions that need to be made. where do we want to put certain things, what do we want to include, you know, what do we want to exclude?
Well, did we decide what a tiny home is? I mean, square footage wise? I mean, didn't we keep it at 1,000?
We haven't changed.
We haven't
it.
changed it.
We put it on the table.
Yeah, and I'm just using that as a discussion.
I know, but I think that's a fact though, because people aren't having big families anymore, and these older homes, you just, by the time you get done renovating it, you probably got 3/4 of a new, smaller one.
Yeah.
Isn't it more what the purchaser of the property wants rather than what we want? And maybe we just say, well, we need to be open to listening to what
Right,
these
right,
That's it.
exactly,
want.
yeah.
That's it, that's exactly it. You know, now I'd like to see a McDonald's on the corner of Main Street. But, you know, it's what the person wants, but we have to be open to be able to listen to, you know, what they want to do, but we also have to do marketing. We have to do sales as individuals and as a group.
So the question I would have, if you were to say put a tiny home on that property, or if someone was considering it, what are the taxes they're going to pay on that lot versus in Detroit up Route 100? Is it going to be big difference, or I mean to the point where they would say, oh, forget it, we'll go to Detroit because it's not that far anyway?
Well, that comes down to taxes and evaluation at that point.
So if you've got a tiny house, the valuation of the house isn't gonna be so great to have it. So you're gonna be paying more taxes on the lot than you are on the house probably.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that, I mean, obviously a discussion of money is important, but I also think it goes back to a quality of life. And why would somebody want to live here instead of living in Detroit? And I think there needs to be a good, and if I'm not mistaken, you know, when this was put together a while ago, you know, there were some community meetings and people came in and they talked about some of the things, and maybe it's time to do that again.
Yeah, we did. We didn't have a lot of input.
No, but I think times have changed and it's a little bit different. And
You know, this past year, with everything the town has done, it's been a really model community. I mean, things have happened that were just very endearing to the citizens, and I've heard a lot of people say, I really love this town. And things like the Somerset House at Christmas, the concerts, you know, those are things that bring a different value that you can't put a price tag on to a town. And I think this past year of activities has really brought the town closer, and I think people who live in Pittsfield are happier about it because of that.
And see, that's why I think maybe for now more people might want to become involved in some discussions, because there is kind of a little bit more positive feeling.
Of course, when the tax bills comes out, that changes. So we have to do it before the tax bills come out.
But then the other side of that coin is, I think in some cases we need to clean up what we have. And again, I'm going to go back to that house and some other ones in town that really, and I know the argument, that was made at the council meeting about, you know, picking up people cleaning up their yards, and then 2 months later it looks worse than it did before. But and this is a terrible example, but back in the day when I was a school administrator, we had problems with kids writing on the walls in the school. Writing, you know, for a quick date scene, no, whatever it was, but they were writing on the walls. And a couple of us got together and said, you know what, every night the custodians are going to go in and they're going to clean that off. And about 2 months later, guess what? the writing on the wall basically stopped. Because people began to take a little bit more pride in what was there. And I think the same thing can happen here too. Yeah, maybe somebody can't afford, you know, luscious gardens and those kinds of things, but, you know, if people begin to get a sense that, yeah, I need to clean up my yard a little bit, make sure that the lawn doesn't get much longer than 6 inches or something like that, that'll catch on. I really believe that. If it works with kids, maybe it'll work with adults. I don't know.
Adults are just big kids.
Some of them are.
Yeah, to get back to that lot across from MCI, you know, now, that house that was there, Steve, did that meet setback requirements?
No.
Okay, and you said if someone bought that within a year and rebuilt, it'd be grandfathered in, right?
Yeah.
So it's been more than a year now, right?
Well, it would be if they had given me a plot plan of the location. I don't think they did. When I give somebody a demolition permit, I always caution. Just a moment, please.
So,
I always caution that they should do a plot plan and put it in the file, because it's only good for a year, but it would, you know, it would give them the opportunity to be grandfathered from some of the property line.
is that something we can change?
Change the setback,
Well, or just, you know, maybe grandfather longer,
you know?
right? I mean, it's like that house in the corner, you know, that needs to be torn down, the same way.
You know,
And that could be torn down, cleaned up, and if it's sat for a couple of years and it's sold, then maybe build on that side a little smaller. But they don't meet setbacks, right? As they are, a lot of them don't meet the,
No. Most all of them, a lot of our lots are 32 feet by 66 feet.
yeah, they're deep, but narrow.
Yeah. And those don't, you know, those don't give you much room.
Right. And I remember you saying it's grandfathered for a year, but if that sits for a while, then someone wants to come in and build
Yeah.
a bigger house rather than a tiny
You know,
house.
they would have the option to go for
Variance? Do you get a variance for
a variance. But there's some stipulations with that as well.
Right. Because there's lots like that around, and if we talk about cleaning the stuff up, you know, there's the opportunity to help move those lots and have someone build.
You want to jump in here and say anything?
Well, then, so I guess I would say, so what would the next step be? The next step, if we own these houses for taxes, then it's the town's prerogative if they want to advertise, for instance, you know, tax acquisitions for sale and try to attract some people to look at some of those. And they'll ask questions. They'll say, well, you know, I like the lot, but the house is, it wouldn't work. Could we build a house on the same footprint? Or, you know, that wouldn't be 3 stories high, or, you know.
Well, and if I'm not mistaken, there used to be an account for people, they could borrow money to do urban houses. You know, somebody's got to,
Yeah, they
somebody
did
who
that
lives
at
in
one
town more
time.
than I have needs to respond to that. Do you remember something like that?
Yeah, I don't remember. It was wasn't that a special deal? They had like a 1% interest or something. I think that was a special government deal, and it expired.
For business loans, too, if you want to move a business,
Yeah.
good deal.
Yeah.
There was a revolving loan fund, and I may be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that Catherine told me last year that it was empty because people had taken out loans and not paid them back, and the town had no way to collect on it.
Oh, the town did the loaning?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's no collateral is provided either. You get $50,000 loan,
yeah, I
it's a small
didn't know.
business, and see you later.
Yeah, that's not a good business.
No, but again, I think there are other ways.
Yeah.
Other ways to do.
No, I mean, it would be up to them to get the financing, but I'm just thinking maybe we could attract 10 families to move into town to figure out what they're gonna do with the property, go to their bank. I mean, I'm not saying Pittsfield should be a bank. There's too much money to be made there, but not really. But I do think, you know, just making that information available. Young people are always looking for, they're young, they've got energy, they've got ideas, but they don't have a lot of money. And if they could find some property that they could either fix up or you know, put something else on there, I think maybe we could get 10 families in town.
But the quality of life is great, but you gotta be able to survive when you get here.
Right,
That's
right.
big.
I think there's a lot of variables in this conversation, and I think we're talking pretty extensively about one. And I'm not saying we should ignore the housing situation, but I think that there are other things that we need to consider too. And I think that that conversation or that series of conversations is probably longer than we're going to have tonight or even over the next 10 days. So I guess my question would be, from this discussion tonight, what sort of action item can we drive, and how can we move forward with having that conversation in a constructive way? So I put it back to you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any suggestions on what's our next step so that we don't keep having this conversation?
Well, I think the next step really needs to be a joint meeting with the council.
Okay. And we've
get some input from them.
and we've requested that. Am I correct?
We have, and maybe now they may be a little bit more willing to participate in that. I mean, we can always try, but I think, again, something needs to happen to promote a community dialogue, to get people to come in and say, we know that they're going to complain about their taxes, but I think you need to show them that, okay, it's going to get worse if people keep moving out.
But Tim, why are people moving out? They're moving out because the taxes are going up. So you gotta stop the bleeding. But the first thing you need to do is get people to stop moving out because of the taxes. You can't fault those people for leaving. Many people are on a fixed income.
Yep.
Their income is not going up at the same rate that the taxes are going up. And you go to some of the town council meetings or watch them and listen, they don't have a problem with it. No problem at all about increasing taxes. Okay? And that perception is out there in the town. Okay? I think that there should be like a wide open discussion. You know, just throw the doors open and do some real brainstorming. And as an example, I mean, this is really going to be out there, and nobody shoot me tonight. No cameras in here or anything. But what about sending the kids to Skowhegan High School? How much money would we save? I know it's never going to happen, but that's the type of thought that you gotta have. If we could save $300,000, are we really up to 65% of our taxes are going towards the education in town now? Is that where we're really at?
Most of the towns are in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked at a number of other towns, and it just,
That's the way life works.
Well,
And even our school system right now, if we had to build, the buildings that we send our kids to are terrible. And we should really build new buildings.
what? Oh yeah, over the elementary schools, that should be combined.
But
That's a no-brainer.
but you go to the Newport system. I know friends and family live over there, and their tax bills definitely aren't going to be going down. What was it, 65 million they spent on the
Yeah, they got-
new
the thing is, they've got the new buildings now, and we still need them.
right? No, I
I mean, there's no easy way out. I know what you're saying.
No, but all I'm saying is that there's got to be some willingness to look at things that nobody, things that are almost like taboo to speak of, because there might be something there. I mean, what would happen if we had a couple of students that wanted to go to Nokomis? Is it cheaper for us to send them to Nokomis than MCI? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, we can trade, I mean, we can,
A number of years ago, didn't students from Pittsfield go to Skowhegan? You ever had the option?
Yep.
well, they have the option to go to Nokomis too. They have kids that could come from.
Well, they went to Skowhegan for the vocational,
No.
for art of, they had some programs.
Well, that's been recently, but I think years ago.
Well, they have what superintendent's agreements, know what that is? Yeah, so you can kind of,
So there's another thing. Do we need a superintendent for this small SAD, or should we be sharing superintendents? I mean, it's money. It's money.
The other thing too, I mean, if you look at our town, it's like, and, you know, this paper presents a glowing image of Pittsfield. But you can take any comprehensive plan in the state, and you've got a glowing glowing image of that town. So what's to stop somebody from comparing towns and comparing prices? Like Anna said, what's to stop somebody from taking a tiny house and going to Detroit or Burnham?
Yeah.
because you live in Detroit or Burnham.
Well,
But,
because
You know,
it's cheap.
I understand that, but there's also, you know,
Yeah, but I mean-
I think we all live in Pittsfield, don't we?
if you had
He doesn't.
if you were from someplace else and you had the option of paying the taxes here or someplace else, especially when you know you can get into the school system. If you're in Detroit, you can get into the school system. Or Burnham, you can get into the school system. Would it make more sense to move to another house where everything's gonna be cheaper overall? Or would it make more sense to move into town?
I think that plays on what else do they want? You know, the kids are gonna go to school and travel, whatever the distances are, but if they wanna live and only be 5 minutes from Dunkin' Donuts, they're gonna choose Pittsfield, so to speak. You know, and there's people out there.
Unless they live in Newport.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, if you wanna be closer to something,
Right.
you know, you tend to live closer. You know, there's people I meet that work for Chimbro and other things, you know, and they travel from Freeport every single day. I just, why the hell would you do
True.
that?
I think that speaks to something that people are gonna live where people wanna live, right? I mean, taxes are not fun to pay. Nobody likes it when taxes go up. Taxes go up everywhere, right? I mean, can anybody name a town where the taxes have gone substantially down in the past 20 years?
I just
Yeah,
talked to
yeah,
somebody the
in
other
North
day.
Dakota, there's a,
Okay, so North Dakota.
well, and the whole reason is because the oil industry moved in.
But so
No,
my point is, right, like people pay. When I was, and this is a much different place than Pittsfield, obviously, but I had friends when I was in grad school that would pay $2,500 a month for a 300 square foot studio apartment to be 10 minutes away from Venice Beach. People are going to live where people want to live, and they're going to find a way to make it work. So I think that there's a lot of conversation here, and again, I think that all of this is valuable conversation. But I really think that if we're going to decide something, we need to set a date and move forward, right? Send an email to the town council and say, here are some proposed dates, let's sit down and have a conversation. And if they don't want to have a conversation, then
Well,
okay.
to be honest, that's why I was hoping that Heather would be here tonight, but she's not, so. But I'll pursue that, that'll be if that's okay, the next step, to contact them.
I think it starts with small steps, so.
Yeah.
Getting together, whether it's grassroots, get some of these houses cleaned up, and those small steps turn into bigger steps. And then they said, it's like you said, cleaning the walls off, right? People see that and say people care, and, you know, takes on a life of its own.
I agree with Ron, I think this gets to be a circular conversation, and we do it a lot, and it leads to absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, it's good things we can do.
Stan,
And maybe
you can interject.
Oh, I'm just learning.
Okay.
We're going to give it
I've
back.
been to plenty of meetings,
That's
believe
okay.
me.
No, just because you can't vote doesn't mean you can't.
Thank you. All right, so I will contact the council and see if we can get something organized and And I think the other thing is, and I'm serious about going on a ride with Steve. And he doesn't like that. We can rent a van or something.
We got a hay wagon?
No?
To go for a ride around town, because I was a little surprised, to be honest. I mean, we see the places, the obvious ones, but when somebody new is coming into town, for some strange reason, they see everything because they're looking for everything. And
Well, people live here, drive by all the time, so after a while, you don't see it.
That's what I mean, people are comparing.
exactly, that's the way to describe it, that we don't see it that much anymore. And,
You know, as a little bit of a backstory, when we first drove into Pittsfield, it was, I think, April of 1979. And the one thing my mother noticed was, the park with the gazebo and a few other things, that stood out and looked, nice. And, granted, the other side of Main Street where Chimbro is, didn't at that time. But, you could pick out a lot of places that did look nice. You drove by MCI, it was, eye appealing. So, that was 40 years ago.
It's funny you should say that, because when we drove into town, the thing we noticed was that, because we came in on Somerset Avenue, all the lawns were mowed and the row of trees going. We just thought, that is so neat.
I guess, one more thought. We can talk about tomorrow, but I think we need to start with where do we want to be 10 years from now or 15 years from now? And somebody coming into town right now, and I know some people who were coming back to town and they didn't go down a certain street because it was so full of potholes.
Mm.
And, that's not a good image to have. And you hit Huff's supply store up there, you know where that line is. And it's pretty scary. It cracked my windshield a little bit farther. It had already been cracked for some other reason. But, it's that little stuff, like you said also, that those little things evolve into bigger things, and then you can actually do.
I mean, and this goes maybe to the council, but is the town gonna be a willing partner in some of this, that people step forward to make some of this stuff happen?
Well, I think it's about time they either put up or shut up.
Well, it'll come down to money, but it may spend a little bit now, but it may, in the long run, be, get it all back.
Investment, yeah.
I'm going to say it again. I think it's time to either put up or shut up.
Absolutely.
Because we've been, well, that's beside the point. So, okay, I'm done. Sorry.
Wonder, should we talk about the sludge thing? Should we decide, or should you decide whether or not you want to form a committee to study that ordinance? Or is it all right the way it is? Actually, there's two ordinances. There's one that was supposed to be a short-term ordinance, and then there was a long-term ordinance that was supposed to be adopted and never was. Catherine says both of those ordinances now are enforceable because the whole book was codified. I never heard that term before, but the whole book, that big heavy book there with all the rules of the whole town, anything that was in there was codified. So we got two sludge ordinances, and I was wondering if they needed to be updated, or if we should want the option to be able to spread some of this material on farms and to help out the farmers, or do we just keep on the way we are?
I think, if Rob Folsom comes in or someone else from the company, everybody can start asking questions and get a better understanding of what everything is. The biggest problem is so many things get called sludge, and everybody has in their mind sludge is municipal waste, has been treated.
they put the sludge name on all kinds of other products, 20, 30 years ago that have nothing to do with that. As soon as you hear sludge, everybody backs up, which is understandable from what they've seen. So I think if Rob comes in and is able to explain, because there's all different kinds of different products out there, and so people have a better understanding of what they're talking about. So then at that point, then they can decide if we want to change some things or have a little meeting or something else. But I think everybody needs to understand what they're talking about first.
Well, so I will attempt to get Rob at the next meeting that he's agreed to do. And, okay, that addresses that one. That's good. Another question I have, of the things in the comprehensive plan that's on this list, I'd like you people to review those for the next meeting. And are there any of them that we should act on? Or have we got the most to vote on? I think that's the kind of input we need on that.
Would it be helpful to have farmers talk? I mean, Tom, you're a farmer?
There's nobody left.
There's nobody left?
And that's the way it is, everywhere now.
So what do you split?
Well,
Just plain old fields, hay fields, stuff like that?
and that's just it, there's different types of products being used for different things, different places. Treated municipal sludge is getting to the point where, I don't know the numbers, Rob would have a lot better idea, but a huge percentage of it is going into landfills because of, potential issues and things. And the problem is DEP and the state of Maine and everybody else, 30 or 40 years ago, went through these products and determined everything was fine and dandy. The problem is technology and, science has determined or found things that 30 or 40 years ago they didn't know was in it or was going to be harmful. And so now things have come back to bite some people. So it's one of those things that I'm well aware that, you need to be cautious on a lot of things. You're better off to err on the side of caution, but I don't know, the big cities that have a lot of product spend huge amount of money, getting rid of that waste. They have a product, and he can talk about it, that I think is coming out of Massachusetts. It's going through a totally different process and being dry pelletized as a commercial fertilizer for almost anybody can use. And it's gone through extensive testing and things, but it gets expensive too, because the more processing and working and transportation, more expensive it gets. 25 or plus years ago, here in Pittsfield, when they were looking at spreading sludge here coming from the Portland Water District, it was all free. Basically, the transportation, the spreading, everything, they were paying for everything, because they were getting to the point where they had to do it to get rid of it. And then, things changed at that point. The ordinances came up, and there was a lot of people opposed to it, and a few people wanted it, probably a few more than voiced their opinion, because sometimes there's things that sometimes you're better off just to be a silent person. But there are a lot of different products out there that have a sludge name mixed in with it that has got a bad rap, and it has nothing to do with the bad stuff, so to speak.
The third page of well, Steve is working on it, has that list of strategies to encourage growth in certain areas. I guess, obviously, one of the things I was talking about is investigate the feasibility of forming a local housing consortium, those kinds of things. So there's a list out there that could be a kickoff for a community discussion in terms of, what we want to do to try to get people, A, first to stay in town, and B, to come to town.
Why are we so adverse to people developing housing in the rural areas?
Well, I think that needs to be part of the discussion.
That was-
Because I have the same question.
Because that was the original intent
Those
of
are-
the
yeah.
comprehensive plan, when the laws were enacted to require comprehensive plans for the towns. Yeah, I was in some of the very first planning, and basically, people were trying to keep the rural districts, as working farmland and things of that sort. But the problem was, it's your land, you're paying taxes on it, you should be able to do pretty much what you want to do with your own land, build a house or whatever else. I was trying, my thought was if there was some way financially incentive, tax-wise or whatever, to encourage staying in the farmland, because essentially if keeping it in farmland and not developing it, there was no dollar incentive to do that. If there was a tax way, and I brought it before a few people and they said legally, tax-wise, there was no way to do that. But, if you could compensate someone for keeping it in production agricultural land, it was a benefit, but if it's your land, you still should be able to do what you want to do with it. That's the problem. But back in the 70s and 80s in Augusta, they started noticing people were moving in from out of state, just buying up property that could be used for farming or logging or whatever. And perception was, if we could put together a comprehensive plan that each town would follow, so that their zoning boards, or it's what we are, would try to zone growth into limited areas and away from farms and away from, like the front, if somebody wanted to build a house, the town has the property. You can't say you can't sell the property.
Well, I'm even thinking more about, there's pieces of land out there that might be 30 or 40 acres. Somebody developer might say, hey, I'd buy that and put 12 houses in there.
Oh, yeah, that's what happens, but the legislation was trying to discourage that, but they couldn't
Right.
prohibit it. So they made they made all these laws about making comprehensive plans
Right.
to discourage that. Just as you drive into Canaan, right there on the left-hand side of it, across from
Right.
23,
Yeah.
that whole hillside has become
A nice neighborhood.
quite a tax base for
Absolutely.
Canaan.
Yeah.
Here's the hoop, towns had to do comprehensive plans, and they were supposed to get a certain amount of money for doing that, and the state never came up with the money.
Yeah, well, that was the last time we did it. They were all required last time.
So, but anyhow, Ron, you had a question, or?
Well, I just had a comment on the second bullet on the second page of this comprehensive plan document. It says, review growth districts to ensure that they permit or encourage mixed-use developments, especially in the C1 town center district. Review performance and density standards and parking access requirements for ease of mixed-use development. When I see mixed-use development, I think that's a pretty important thing, because a lot of the regulations that were put in place that Royce was talking about were designed to discourage that sort of rural development, which means that increased population pressure means that we're also going to have to start to figure out how to use existing buildings for more than just their original intended use. All right, so if I want to have a home business out of my house in the center of town, what do the regulations say and how do we encourage that, right? If we have a building that was originally a woolen mill, for example, what can we do with that space now versus what was its intended use? So I think that item, if we're looking at items on here that are really going to help to stimulate growth, economic, rural, housing, et cetera, that might be something that we zero in on that could be beneficial.
So step one, a letter to, or comments to the council, see where they're coming from. Try to get working together.
That would be a meeting on its own. Or,
Meeting.
would it be considered a meeting or just a friendly get together?
It would have to be
Depends on who shows up.
Well, but okay.
It would have to be a meeting.
Excuse me?
It would have to be a meeting because there's more than 3 councilors all
Oh,
present.
okay. Yeah, well, I forgot about that part. I remember that from a few years back.
Okay. Any other business? The only other thing I would add is Steve put together nicely a little calendar of all of our meeting dates. Hopefully you have a copy of it.
That, and also you have a offer to give some training in shoreline zoning on January
28.
28th. If anybody's interested in doing that, will you get in touch with me in the next few days? Give you a chance to think about it and so forth. And then I gotta give you I want to give you a heads up on a request that Chinro is wanting us to do. They have a problem. They have so many different facilities in town that a truck driver comes into town, he cannot figure out which way to go, goes the wrong way, bound up traffic, can't turn around. They have people coming to do training or salesmen, they can't figure out what building to go to or where it is. And they would like to put a bunch of traffic directional signs in town to direct people to this. And then talking with Catherine about it, we kind of have the same problem with the industrial park too. Trucks can't find the right way to go because there's not signs. And I guess the trailer manufacturing company is having the worst issue with that. So what they brought in, I'm just going to lay on it and we'll walk around and take a look at it, was what they'd like to do. And it far exceeds our zoning ordinance. For us to do something like this, we would have to consider rewriting our zoning, our sign ordinance to allow it or to allow some portions of it or something. And so just kind of a heads up that this is going to come before the planning board if we should honor their request. So you guys can take a look at that and see how many signs they have and what they propose to do with them. And
Would that be different than like, you know, a lot of places you get off the highway or whatever, and there's a lot of signs that direct you to hospitals and other, you know, the jet port or other things of that sort.
which are both like that.
Well, it varies. I've seen different sizes, but you know.
So how big are they proposing to be?
Do that. Okay.
They're all the information is right there.
Oh, I see.
And my thought tonight is just kind of giving people a heads up that there's something that's coming up.
Is this going to be before the next meeting, Steve?
I expect it would be, yeah.
That's a lot of signs.
Seems like all the emergency rescue signs. They pop up out of nowhere.
I don't know what the hell.
I don't know. It's just what it
Well,
is.
it's all supposed to be if you got a major, like they pile up on the interstate, at that point, they direct people around it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
How did we get by the last 100 years? How many and where?
Yeah, so it's 100 acre, I guess it would depend on where they go.
It would sure change the appearance of things around town.
They would.
That's designed to show where they go there.
Yeah, I think the big map showing where they're going to be.
Not gonna change the name of it,
Just formally pitched it.
Let's say duck doesn't.
Looks like what? Duck.
When do you think this is coming up, Steve? In the near future or?
Well, they brought these in the other day, and tell you the truth, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And, but I do kind of see a need for doing it, and it's the same.
They see trucks all the time that turn around, they don't know where they're going.
Yeah,
Whether they get down to the tap shop, or they get down to the equipment yard, or, you know,
yeah,
it's just
Yeah,
confusion.
you know, 'cause I've seen people, you know, trucks will stop out by A roads and ask for directions, how do I get to Timbro? Well, I said, track trailer
Yeah,
up to
right.
Main Street.
Yeah.
Or- But, you know, and a lot of times the truck driver might have an address, but he doesn't know what the, you know, if they've never been there before, what
Yeah.
they're going for.
yeah.
See, they got GPS, and
I
that's
was
all.
gonna
a lot
say,
of
don't they? I'm sure they have GPS.
Steve, I think that signage like that is important, but as somebody just said, GPS can really help to direct. One of the issues we have in town though is GPS doesn't like to lead you to the right place because the roads were renamed after,
All the 911.
yeah, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there any, do we have any capacity at all to correct that in some way? Is that something that we can look at? Because I have people come into town to, like relatives or whatever, come to my house and I say, don't listen to your GPS, it's gonna lie to you once you get off the highway, just stop at the library. That's the only way that people will find me.
I travel a lot doing this other job that I have, and I've been put on snowmobile trails before.
Yeah.
Where you follow it.
Jack Rice says that it still diverts people down to the park to get over to Cocoma.
Oh, yeah?
He said he's had trucks come down through there, think they can get over to Cocoma through the park. GPS is on the go that way.
Yeah.
So it might be worth investigating, and I'm not saying we need to say no to the signs, I think there's something valuable there. But it might be worth investigating too, for us to say, how do we reach out to Google and say, fix this, you know?
I know people do that, they call in, and there's a privilege for doing that, I've never done it, but.
Yeah, Dr. Vaughn, you know, change anything on the lights. I changed my house.
So probably the next meeting, you guys will see our copy of our existing sign ordinance and trying to look for suggestions here on what we can do to
Who's heading this up from Timbro?
Harold Sherwood. He's the one that headed up the depot building.
He drew the short straw. Again.
There's no such thing as a short straw, you just get told what.
Yeah, that's right. You like it.
So in addition to that, at the next meeting, I guess maybe the other thing that I would encourage is the list that Steve has put together about things that we've done or not done on the comprehensive plan. And maybe something that we want to do or you want to do, circle it or do something, and we'll put that on the agenda. So what off of this list do we want to make projects for this year? My suggestion also, and somebody may agree with this, but you know, if we don't have a whole lot of items on our agenda, I think we still maybe could meet and do some of this other business. To kind of somehow, I think we need to let folks in town know that this committee is alive and well. And
I mean, this time of year, once a month is not a problem, right?
not a problem.
Not a problem.
Once we get to the nice weather, like summertime, that's a little bit different, but for now, you know, and come up with things that maybe we want to take this list and
Even for half an hour, you know, whatever.
yes, and somebody can bring cookies. So, The only other, and again.
Or munchkins.
On Munchkins, just again, a reminder that Steve sent out this little list. And I think we should have a contest. And the contest is the person that comes in with the most checks in terms of how many times they've seen Simone on TV.
Oh,
It's like most, no offense, but it's like most of those ads. Once or twice, you don't pay attention no more.
well, I'll be glad when people get to that point, I think.
It's on my phone now, too.
Somebody came over my office and said, "What, have you seen this yet?"
Any
I know
other
we went to
items
the
that anybody
restaurant
wants to bring
tonight,
up?
people there, and it's just,
Is this your 15 minutes?
in 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I just figured it would just blow away and nobody would notice.
Oh, my head snapped right around. No, that's.
Cause you heard the voice, right?
Yeah.
That's what got me with the voice. How
My
many
son in
people-
Florida got a message from one of his old friends here in town, and it said, "So how does it feel being the son of a movie star?" He said, "I had no idea what he was talking about, you know." And then Paul Davis, senator for, like, I don't know, up Sangerville way anyway, called him. He was out on his boat, and Paul Davis called him and said, "Hey Bob, you gotta get to that ad that your mother did. She did a really good job on that." He said, and then I realized, because I had mentioned it to the family that I had done that, but it was a while ago, and you know, and so he put it on Facebook with best ad ever. Great. Oh, but it was fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Any other items? Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I
Is there a
second.
second? Royce and I thank you for your vote of confidence tonight, and
Or you do the unlucky straw.
Red dot, Dan?